Hey there. If you live for jaw-dropping stories that leave your chest tight and your mind reeling, then you're exactly where you belong. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and become part of our intimate little storytelling family. Let's dive in. I never intended to fall in love with him. That was never supposed to be part of the plan. In the beginning, it was meant to be a single, regrettable night, blurred by too many drinks and not nearly enough sense. But the moment I stood outside his apartment door again, just 2 weeks later, I knew I'd already crossed a line I could never step back over. I met Caleb through work. I'm a marketing analyst at a mid-sized tech firm, and he was a creative lead they brought in for a high-stakes campaign overhaul. He wasn't just talented. He was sharp, quietly witty, and impossibly observant. He remembered how I took my coffee, complimented my earrings when no one else noticed, and seemed to pick up on the exact moment my fake smile cracked under a stressful week. My husband, Drew, hadn't looked at me like that in at least 3 years. But Drew wasn't a bad man. He was steady, thoughtful, the kind of partner who brought groceries home without being asked, rubbed my back when I was exhausted, and never expected anything in return. He was my safe place. And yet, somewhere along the way, our lives began moving in parallel, like two trains on separate tracks, never quite colliding but no longer moving as one. When Caleb laughed at my jokes like they were the highlight of his week, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long, seen, wanted, alive. The first time it happened was during a work trip to Chicago. After a client dinner and a few too many drinks, we found ourselves walking back to the hotel side by side, our arms brushing, our steps slower than necessary. The silence in the elevator was heavy, electric. I turned to say goodnight, and he kissed me. I kissed him back. And I didn't stop him when he opened his door and pulled me inside. The guilt didn't arrive immediately. The next morning, I looked at him sleeping beside me and smiled like I wasn't betraying everything I had built. I told myself it was a one-time escape, a fluke, that it didn't mean anything. But the silence at home didn't disappear, and neither did the thrill I felt every time Caleb's name lit up my phone. For 6 months, I lived 2 lives. By day, I was Drew's wife, present, loving, making dinner and small talk. On weekends, I told him I was staying at my sister's place when I was actually tangled in Caleb's sheets, pretending that what we were doing didn't destroy me a little more every time. I began picking fights with Drew, tiny arguments that made me feel justified in my distance. If we were already struggling, I reasoned, then maybe I wasn't cheating. I was just seeking what he no longer gave me. But Caleb wasn't content living in the shadows. One night, after we'd made love, he turned to me and asked, "What happens next?" My stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" I asked. Do you see this go anywhere? Or am I just your escape hatch?" I didn't know how to respond. I had thought about leaving Drew, but every time I imagined packing up our life, splitting furniture, explaining it to my parents, enduring the judgment, I froze. Drew didn't deserve that. And I didn't want to become the woman who burned her marriage down for something she wasn't even sure would last. "I need time," I told Caleb. He nodded, but his eyes gave him away. I could see the hope fading. That same night, when I walked to the door at home, Drew had made dinner. He'd lit a candle. "I miss you," he said gently, and the freight train of guilt hit me at full speed. I sat across from him, forcing down pasta and pretending my chest wasn't caving in. He reached for my hand, his voice tender. "I know I've been distant lately, but I want to fix this. I want us back." Tears pooled in my eyes. "Me too," I whispered, and for a moment, I almost believed it. That weekend, I stayed home. No lies, no trips to Caleb's apartment. Drew and I went for a walk, laughed like we hadn't in months, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. But Caleb didn't vanish. He kept texting. At first, I ignored the messages. Then I replied short, polite, then not so short, then not so polite. And within 2 weeks, I was back in his bed. The double life resumed, only now the guilt followed me everywhere. I couldn't look Drew in the eye. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I slept with it face down, on silent, deleting every message the second it arrived. I told myself I had it under control, that no one would get hurt. Then came the night I realized just how wrong I was. It started with Drew being strangely quiet, still but alert, not angry, just watching. I asked if something was wrong. He smiled faintly. No, just tired. A week passed, then another, and then one evening, I came home from a dinner with Jenna to find him sitting on the couch, laptop open, posture stiff. "Hey," I said, trying to sound breezy. "You okay?" He turned the screen toward me. A video was paused. It showed me walking into Caleb's apartment, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing like we were invincible. My knees went weak. "I installed a tracking app on your phone 3 weeks ago," Drew said, his voice quiet and tight. I needed to know if I was losing my mind. "You're not," I whispered, but that's all I could say. The words dried up. The shame sat in my throat like poison. "How long?" he asked, barely louder than a breath. I swallowed. "Since Chicago." He exhaled sharply, like he'd taken a punch to the gut. He nodded, closed the laptop, stood up. "I'll stay at a friend's tonight," he said, calm but hollow. "You should figure out what you want." That night was the first time I truly felt the weight of guilt. Not the nervous flutter in Caleb's bed, not the awkward silences with Drew. This was something deeper, an ache that buried itself inside me, marrow deep. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Caleb called that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, Drew was gone. He didn't come back. Not that week. Not the one after. I tried to call, to text. Nothing. Then one morning, an email arrived. A divorce agreement. Clean, cold, clinical, no drama. Just legal language and a single line of personal truth. Asterisk, you weren't the only one who was lonely. I just chose not to betray you for it. Asterisk, I stared at that sentence for hours. I ended things with Caleb. There was no dramatic blow-up. I simply told him I couldn't do it anymore. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He just sighed and said, "I guess I always knew how this would end." It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. People say time heals guilt, but that's a lie. Time doesn't heal it. It just teaches you how to carry it better. I don't talk to Drew. Sometimes I hear through mutual friends that he's doing well. I hope he is. I hope he's found peace, even happiness. I think about the life we built, the trust one shattered, and the woman I used to be, the one who believed she could straddle 2 worlds and walk away unscathed. I thought I could handle the guilt. I was wrong.